ask yourself, when you're delegating to somebody, are you giving them a process that the average person having a really bad day can still get done 100% of the time with success? If not, the problem is probably you.
Welcome back to Outsourcing and Scaling. We have a very special guest today, Demir. Demir and his wife, Carrie, own Lifehack Bootcamp, the productivity and lifestyle design company for high-performing individuals who want to bring sanity back into their lives. Demir, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to connect. This is the first time you and I have talked. I've been working with Carrie for years. She was actually one of the first clients for FreeUp, giving us a chance when we were really small. So for that, we're forever grateful. And I'm really excited to talk to you and pick your brain all about scaling businesses. But first, let's take a gigantic step back. Talk to me about growing up. I'm curious about what entrepreneurs were like as a kid. Were you a straight A student? Were you a rebel?
Wow. I mean, not to get too personal, but, I had a really sort of rough childhood. We were really poor. My mom struggled with drugs. We were in foster care, in and out of foster care. So I don't want to paint a overly negative picture. We actually were surrounded by people who absolutely loved us. So we were very lucky in that sense that, even when our mother was struggling, she was very supportive and very loving. And even we were living with our grandparents and aunts and uncles and foster, they were all we had an abundance of amazing people who loved us. So very well loved as a child, a little bit disruptive. I think it upset my schoolwork a little bit. And so just bouncing between schools and stuff was a little bit disruptive. I think it sort of gave me that personality of having a bit of there's a positive and a negative. Positive, I have this resilience of I can always start over. Like I've started multiple businesses, multiple careers. So starting over is not, something that scares me. It's sort of actually exciting to me. And I have a present tense, a sort of future tense sort of default. I'm always looking to the future. I think the negative is it put a chip on my shoulder that I always felt like I had something to prove. So yeah, I don't know where you want to go from there, but that's me as a child.
Yeah, it's always interesting. So how long before you got that entrepreneurial itch, or did you always have it?
Good question. I mean, we were always making stuff. I don't know about entrepreneurial, but creator for sure, right? I'm definitely at my heart somebody who loves to build stuff. And I feel like I used to write plays and act when I was a kid. And I feel like that creative outlet as an adult has become much more around I have fun building stuff that people use. And then the cool part of the market economy is then I get paid for it. But I think even if I didn't get paid, I'd probably still want to build stuff that people use. That's cool for me.
So let's bridge the gap a little bit. I want to hear more about your story. I mean, obviously you start traveling the world later. I know you guys spend months at a time in different places and you founded Lifehack Bootcamp. Talk to me about either college or after college. How did you eventually get to that point?
Yeah, I mean, the mistaken path that I walked, and when I say it's a mistake, I don't regret it and I wouldn't do it differently. It took me to where I'm at. But, for me, I was very much one of those insecure overachievers who was following the status quo, right? I did everything I was told to do, right? I was a success story. I came from behind, bad upbringing, and it was a 4.1 student, got a full ride scholarship to UC San Diego for aerospace engineering, then transferred to UC Berkeley, graduated from one of the best schools in the country, worked for the governor of Hawaii as her housing policy advisor at the age of 23, was one of the youngest real estate analysts in Wall Street. I mean, just hit after hit. You can imagine how proud my parents were that I was just doing everything that society wanted me to do, right? At every stage. The problem was my life wasn't getting better. Every single time it was getting worse. And that's the mystery. And I think that's really the people that we're here to help and the solution we're here to solve just as a business, Lifehack Labs and Lifehack Bootcamp, is we're here for people who've done everything right and they still look at their life somewhere between their late 30s and their 50s and they're like, wait, I did it all right. I got the education. I did the career. I'm achieving the success that from the outside looks like it's good, but I'm looking at my life and I'm not loving it. And so we're here to help people make that transition between the life that they have and the life they want to have using productivity as the fuel. Because at the end of the day, you don't manifest your dream life. You don't wish it. You don't daydream for it. The way that you get it is good old fashioned hard work and leveraging the best tools and technologies and resources. We're going to talk in a moment about how outsourcing and delegating is a huge resource, but that's just one of many ways that you just work harder to create your dream life. And so that's the person we're here to serve, is somebody who's achieved a lot of success. They're ready to make a big transition to make sure that now the success equals the life they actually want to be living. And then, and they know that productivity is the fuel that's going to get them there.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the listeners are in the same boat. They might be making money, maybe more money than someone who has a boss and is a typical employee, but they're working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They might be having family issues because of it. They don't take enough time away from their business. And how do you even start working with someone like that? Someone comes to you, they've had success in business, but their personal life isn't where they want it to be. What is step one?
Well, okay, I'm going to back up just a second and just say, I know how to make that kind of big transition because I did it myself. So I'm just going to back up in my story a little bit and put a pin in that question. Just say that, in October of 2013, right at the height of my powers, when I was going on Fox and CNBC and Bloomberg, on a monthly basis, I was hospitalized 3 times with a chronic stress-related illness, and I ended up having emergency surgery. And the doctor basically said, I need you to work somewhere between 30 and 40 hours a week, which for somebody in finance is like basically telling a pro basketball player that he can play basketball, he just has to play with one hand behind his back, which is also to say that that's never going to happen. And so what I did within 2 months is I was able to put together not just one thing, but multiple pieces of the productivity puzzle and go from working 80 hours a week to 8 hours, right? So within 2 months, actually, no, it's 8 hours a month. So within 2 months, I went from working 80 hours a week to effectively 2 hours a week. That's a 40-time reduction in my workload. And, today, fast forward, I've been using that and continuing that process where now we have the lifestyle that I sort of always wanted, but doubted that I could have, where we have a multi-million-dollar business. We live in paradise. We live in a home that we've paid off in cash. I have financial security. I have time freedom, right? So I know what it takes to make a big transition mid-career and actually pull it off and have dependents and be the breadwinner at the same time, right? So your question, now back to your question, which is like, what's step one? And step one, very simply, is ownership, right? And I know this is like, maybe people want to hear like something that's more step 5 or step 10, but no, step one. And if you do it right, it's the most important step is this is the ownership mantra. Try this out for size. See how this fits. I'm responsible for everything in my life, good or bad. And I'm going to be the solution for every problem, right? When we say that, I'm responsible for everything in my life, good or bad, and I'm going to be the solution to every problem, it 100% turns everything back on us, and all the things that we're complaining about, we're saying, well, I wish I could live the life that I want to live, but if not for this thing or my boss or this circumstance or whatever, when you get into ownership and you recognize that nobody did this to you, right? And even if they did do something to you, it's not helping you get out of it to just sort of observe or hold up evidence in the court of like public opinion of like, don't you see why I can't live the life that I'm living? It's because this person or this circumstances. If you like that life, go ahead, but it's not going to give you a pathway forward. Nathan, I'm sorry, I'm on such a soapbox, but let me give you a quick story that just perfectly personifies this. So when I was in finance, I had sort of like this meteoric rise until I hit this ceiling. And it was this boss that at the time I considered to be the worst boss in the world. And I thought that I didn't see any ownership in the situation. I thought he was just a total Nazi and holding me back. And then I got the worst thing that a victim can get, which is proof. So I got CC'd in on an email accidentally where he was telling all of my higher ups all the reasons that I shouldn't get promoted. So I realized they were thinking about promoting me, but he was actively preventing me and undermining my promotion. And that cost me another 2 years of sitting back and being like, see, I would be promoted now except for that guy. But what broke me loose was this extreme ownership mantra. I'm the source of every result in my life, good or bad, and I'm going to be the source of any solution. What happened there was I started to ask myself, okay, well, Demir, how did you contribute to this poor relationship? with this boss. I mean, he's not undermining you for no reason, right? Like you threatened him, right? You did things to undermine him, right? So I started at what did I do? And then I asked myself, now, how am I going to be the one who solves this? Not anybody else. Nobody's going to come to my rescue. And what's interesting is I asked myself a simple question. How could I be so good they can't ignore me, right? And what is a promotion if not permission to make money for your business? So I asked myself, how can I make $1 million for this business this year? Created a product with nobody's permission, nobody's help. I created a product for the company, ended up making millions and millions of dollars for the company in 2008 when the markets were crashing and nobody knew where real estate was going. I had created a data predictor that showed people where real estate prices were going. Well, guess what happened? Of course they had to promote me. It didn't matter how many objections that boss had. When you make your company $8 million in one quarter, right, you're gonna get promoted, right? And so I know that's a mindset and people are looking for tactics, but the truth is that the journey to lifestyle freedom is actually more of a journey in the 6 inches between your ears than it is some kind of outward journey. Yes, there will be things happening out there. Yes, we're going to be leveraging technology and outsourcing and tools, but at the end of the day, there's going to be so many things that happen to you. And if you're just going to fall down and cry and get victimized by things, then you're never going to get there and you might as well stop even hoping for it because you are your own superhero that's going to swoop in and save your own day. Sorry to get coachy on that, but that's the honest answer to the question.
No, I totally agree. I mean, even with hiring, which is what I talk to people a lot, I mean, there's so many things you can't control, from personal issues to human mistakes. And you can spend 24 hours a day worrying about all the things you can't control. But if you change your mindset and you only focus on the things that you can control, how you can communicate better, how you can manage and be a better leader, how you can decide who you want to hire and improve your process, it's a lot better use of your time just from a logical perspective. So I love that. Yeah. What's the next step after that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the next step is you have to ask yourself, let me back up and say, there's a tsunami coming. The tsunami is AI and technology, right? And I think you can ride that wave to tremendous success, or you could be engulfed in that wave and buried, right? And I think the riding the wave, sorry, gracias. My housekeeper just brought in some coffee for me. Just in time too. So talk about lifestyle design. Like, we have a live-in maid. We live here in Colombia. So like, you know, I didn't have to make this coffee. It just got brought into me. It's fantastic. No, you know, surfing the wave looks like the people who are going to wrap themselves in technology. Here's what I mean. At the juicy core, they'll still be a human being with all of the amazing capabilities that human beings have, but they're going to wrap themselves in an Iron Man suit of tools, technology, and systems, right? And that Iron Man suit is just like Tony Stark. It's going to allow them to do things that they couldn't do before. And you know, it's going to allow them to fly. It's going to allow them to shoot laser beams out of their eye and, you know, lift tanks that are 10 times their weight, right? That's the point of productivity technology systems, is to magnify you. But if you assume that it's not, if you assume that there's no treading water, think about this, because I think this is the biggest mistake that people make. They think that I'll be able to just tread water into this sea change, right? Like, I'll be fine. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing until I retire. What if there is no treading water? What if you're either going to use these technologies and leverage them and stay apace, or you're going to fall behind, right? What if you're not moving forward, then you're fall behind? What if that's the paradigm? Then it calls you forth that you have to learn how to use these tools and technologies and systems. You must, just to stay abreast of the change that's going to sweep over us, right? And so what we do here at Lifehack Bootcamp, in the simplest terms, is we build people their Iron Man suit. That's what we do. We show them how to not just be Tony Stark, but actually be Iron Man, build a suit that will fly them to the battlefield, and they can do glorious battle to create the life that they really want to be creating and create the business that they want to be creating.
And I think a lot of people's objection to that is, I'm not tech savvy, or I don't feel comfortable doing it. What do you tell those people?
Yeah, you can bleep me out here, but bullshit. Bullshit. Bleep me 3 times if you need to. Everybody's using technology. You know what? I would tell the story about my grandmother. My grandmother spent years saying that she could never get on Facebook, never get on Facebook. Never, I don't know how to use these computer things, this technology thing. And then she figured out one simple thing. She figured out all the pictures of all her grandkids and everything that they were doing was in Facebook. And I can tell you, I've never seen somebody learn Facebook faster than this woman did. She learned Facebook in 48 hours and she was 85 years old, right? I mean, she just whooped Facebook's butt, right? It was because her incentive, she discarded her fear. She leaned 100% into it. And within 48 hours, an 85-year-old woman not only learned Facebook, but essentially learned how to use the computer so that she could use Facebook. I mean, she went the whole gamut within 48 hours. So the truth is that tech fear you're talking about, you know what another way to think about that? Comes back to that victim mindset. What you're really, it's not just tech fear. You're allowing yourself to be victimized by technology, right? And it's a convenient way for you not to have to step out of your comfort zone and you not have to step into fear. Guys, at the end of the day, this is a morbid analogy. I call it the Taken analogy. You know, Liam Neeson, they take his daughter and he'll do anything to get her back. If I took your husband or your wife or your daughter or your son and I kidnapped them and I said the only way to get them back is to learn how to use ActiveCampaign or to learn how to use ClickFunnels or to learn how to use this, or even, heaven forbid, the big fear, to learn how to code a bit of programming, right? If I did that, you would laugh at me because you would know that you could do it. This is not something you can't do. This is something that the average person in the middle of the bell curve can do if they're leaned in and the stakes are high enough and they want it and they step out of their victim mentality and step into ownership.
I love it. And I think that's a great answer. And I think you're absolutely right. So let's talk about delegation a little bit, because there's a time and a place to learn things, but there's also a time and a place to just hire someone that knows how to do it or to do stuff. Yeah. So how do you find that line of what should I be spending my time learning and what should I just be passing off to other people?
Oh my goodness. Now let's get ready and dig in here because I love the topic of delegation. Let's start at the top and say, and I'm going to go through some concepts fast. So if you want to learn more, just email me, Demir@lifehackbootcamp.com. I can send you some additional materials. You can check out our website and our YouTube page. We've got a lot of this stuff there. The first thing you need to do is think about what we call the TACO method. TACO is TACO, terminate, automate, consolidate, outsource. I'll say it one more time. Terminate, automate, consolidate, outsource. That's in order. People think of outsourcing as the first thing that they do, but actually there's 3 steps you need to take before you give something, like I call it a human intelligence task, before you give a task to a human being that only a human being can do, right? The first thing is, does this task even need to be done? I know that it sounds like crazy, but like, is this task adding value to your life? Is it adding value to your business? Or can it be eliminated? Like, do you have a 30-step process that can be turned into a 5-step process? Guys, if you want to get the best out of a human intelligence assistant, right? If you want to get the best out of somebody, simplify your process before you delegate it to them. I can't tell you how many of my clients I see take their jacked up, overcomplicated Frankenstein process and drop it on some poor person in India or Indonesia or even Kentucky, and that person is struggling to understand your jacked up process. You have ownership. You need to give them a process that a rational human being, that this is my qualification. I want to give my people, my executive assistants, a task that the average human being having a bad day can get done 100% of the time with success. Ask yourself, when you're delegating to somebody, are you giving them a process that the average person having a really bad day can still get done 100% of the time with success? If not, the problem is probably you, not them. The problem is probably you. And in 9 times out of 10, when I see people complaining about their assistant, I'd say probably more like 8 times out of 10, it really isn't the assistant, it's the process. And you haven't stepped up to creating what I call bulletproof processes. So we'll get back to that, but terminate, right? Terminate whatever's unnecessary. Automate. Don't send it to an in-person assistant. If there's an automated AI program that can do the same thing, for cheaper, faster, better, right? I mean, we've got all these. Have you really asked yourself, can I automate this before, or automate parts of it before I delegate it to this assistant, right? And then, of course, there's consolidate, right? Like, if it's happening like little Swiss cheese all over the place, right? Can you put it together into one big brick, into one big lump so that you can power through it? Sort of like doing your taxes at the end of the year. You just sort of like get through it in one big sort of power session. It's consolidated. You're not doing a little bit of taxes every single day, right? So can you also consolidate it? So first of all, go through the process of terminating, automating, consolidating, and then if you have tasks left over that cannot be terminated, that cannot be automated, that cannot be consolidated and done by you personally, then you're looking at tasks that are good and a right fit for outsourcing, right? And then here's the important part. Then you've gone through a process where you've actually refined that and you've done it yourself a bunch of times and you've simplified it from a 30-step process down to a 5-step process and augmented it with some technology so that when you do delegate it, it doesn't take that person a ton of cognitive load and 30 hours to do. They can bang it out in 1 hour. So that's the first piece of this.
Do you want to keep going with the second, or do you want me to ask another question?
I'll say this. I'll say this too. The second piece is going to be standard operating procedures. I'll give you guys a tip. I mean, this is literally, it took me 10 years to figure this out. I'm just going to give it to you, drop it on you just right now. If you give somebody a written set of instructions, you will get about a 60% perfect rate, meaning they will get it done perfectly about 60% of the time. The other 20%, they'll get it done, but it won't be perfect. Maybe they'll miss a couple steps. And then 20% of the time, they will just get it done completely wrong, right? If you give them a video, like a screencast of you actually doing the task, that goes up a little bit to like 80% perfect, right? Another 10%, like they'll get it, most of it done right, but they'll still get some parts of it wrong. And 10% of the time, they'll get it wrong. But if you combine video and written, your success rate goes up to 97%.
Love it.
When you give your outsourced executive assistant or talent a process to run where you have a video of you doing it perfectly and a written set of instructions, do this, then this, then this, then this, and this, you will get a 97% success rate. And you will hardly ever get somebody completely screwing it up. That's the second part. You need to step up to documenting your process. At the end of the day, this is just Nathan taking what's in his head and taking it out of his head and putting it into some kind of container and then giving that container to somebody else and them picking that up and being able to replicate it. So the most important part is something that you have ownership over, which is clearly enunciating and laying out your process.
So let's talk about hiring, because I saw that you guys hired someone from FreeUp either earlier this week or last week. I forget exactly when.
Yeah.
What is the process you go through? You meet a freelancer, let's say you get them on the FreeUp platform, wherever you find them. What are you walking through to find out, hey, is this person the right fit for me and for what I'm trying to do?
It depends on the role. So there's, I call it downsourcing, side sourcing, and upsourcing, right? It's almost like there's more words for snow. Like, the Inuits have like 100 words for snow. We say outsourcing, but the truth is that downsourcing is, there's a task that I do every single day repetitively. I'm just going to document it and I'm going to send it down to somebody who costs less per hour than I cost so that I can leverage my hours for something. That's the traditional thought. Side sourcing is the idea of, I'm going to find a professional who's just as good at what they do as I am at what I do. And I don't really know, a good example is a web developer. I'm not a pro web developer. They are, right? So they're more of a peer to me than they are like some kind of low level McDonald's level employee. They've spent a lot of time developing an expertise. I see them as a peer. Since I can't build my own site for myself, I'm just leveraging them and their experience as an expert in their field, right? And then there's upsourcing, which is this idea of like paying an hour for Gary Vaynerchuk's time, right? So going and paying like, $1,000 or $5,000 to sit down with somebody who's truly at the 1% of 1% in their field and asking them about problems and obstacles and issues that you have. Those are all the way of you getting help that's outside of you. But you wouldn't say I'm outsourcing to Gary Vaynerchuk, right? You're not outsourcing something. Well, I like the idea of downsourcing, side sourcing, and upsourcing. Now, in that category, the person we hired this week was a side source, meaning they are somebody. I can't tell them how to do their job because I don't know how to do their job. The only thing I can do is set them up for success. So what I try to do with that is send them SOPs or video recordings that do a couple things. Number one is I try to have all the wireframes and everything just perfectly dialed in. So that person has a super clear roadmap to work from. And there's absolutely no imagination they have to use to fill in the gaps. Like every single last detail is really filled in. That's just giving them a packet that they can work from. And then two, if they do have a creative component where they have to like sort of think about what I need, I like to give them 5 good examples and 5 bad examples. Here's 5 examples of, I think, a membership. We're working on a membership site. 5 examples of a membership just done perfectly right. And here's 5 examples of just crappy, I do not want it to look like this, right? You would be surprised if you give people, even people who have to use their imagination, like graphic artists and web developers, if you give them 5 good examples and 5 bad examples, you'd be surprised at how much that will take the quality of their output and jack it up. And now I'm happy, Nathan, to talk about how it's a completely different situation when you're downsourcing versus when you're upsourcing. But I just gave you that side sourcing example.
Nice. Yeah, I love it. So let's say you're working with someone, they've committed to learning the technology they need for their business. They're hiring for the first time, they're delegating, they're getting some tasks off their plate. Where do you take it from there to really transition everything to that lifestyle business that they want?
I mean, that's a big question. Where do you take it from there? I mean, it sort of depends on where they started and where they're at in their journey. I mean, our client is somebody who's been very frequently somebody who's been tremendously successful, but they're buried in their business.
Right.
That's a very common archetype for our client. It's somebody it's not that they're not successful. It's not that they're not productive. It's that the more they get productive, the more work hits their plate. And it's almost like they're the mechanical Turk inside the machine. Like they're inside, they're pulling all the pistons and steering all the wheels, right? And it's killing them. It's killing their health. It's killing their enjoyment. They're making money, and if they could just pull themselves out of the machine and get the machine running by itself, they would be stoked. So for a person like that, often what we're doing is they have resources to start to delegate to in their company right now. Right. So we always think about outsourcing or delegation as like, oh, we're going to hire somebody in Indonesia. We're going to hire somebody in the Philippines. Right. But often it starts with you really using the people in your office at the highest level. Right. I'll tell you a story, and I think you'll love this, Nathan. There was this guy who was in a tech startup, sort of a middling tech startup, not failing, not huge unicorn like Uber, just sort of like right there in the middle. And he was working for 2 years to get his B round funding. Right. And it wasn't a lot of money. It was like $150,000, but he was working 2 years to just scratch together like $150,000. And then the day that they were supposed to close, all the investors fell out and he had like a nervous breakdown. And he was counting on this money to hire 24 new people to scale his business into the next like level. He had such a bad nervous breakdown that his office mate, like his employees and his partners, literally came to him with a ticket to Hawaii, and they said, "You're going to Hawaii for 2 weeks. We're worried you're going to like jump out of a window or something and kill yourself because you're so depressed right now about how bad this went." Right. So he went to Hawaii and he had an epiphany. He came back and he said, "Guys, all we have is $5,000 extra a month. There's really not much to do with $5,000 a month. I could hire 1 new person. I had needed 24 new people." So what he said is, I'm going to split that $5,000 and I'm giving everybody here a $500 a month budget to go on Upwork and hire an outsourcer on Upwork. And I don't care what you do. I'm not going to look over your shoulder. I'm not going to grade it, but you need to spend that money. And what he did, which was amazing, is he turned all of his employees into managers instantly.
Wow.
Now he went from 1 manager with 8 employees to 9 managers, like 1 CEO, 9 managers. And now they were leveraging 36 contractors, outsourcers, executive assistants, data entry people, right? So he still says to me, this was the best thing that ever happened to my business, not getting that money, because we're doing everything that we wanted to do with that B round funding, but we did it with $5,000 a month. And that's what's awesome about what you guys do at FreeUp, is if people really think about it in context, the first thing you want to do is turn all of your employees into managers, right? And now you're having management meetings, not employee meetings, right? Now they're feeling the stress and pressure and obligation and respect and responsibility of management. And because even one of the funniest part of the story, the little cherry on the cake, is that his intern hired 5 people underneath him. He had a summer intern, and the summer intern had 5 people. So with the summer intern, he was having a conversation about like, okay, how are your people doing? Are you giving them what they need? Are you giving them instructions? How's the materials coming back, right? So what's great about that is you're basically promoting everybody in your organization. I'll shut up, but I love this topic.
No, I love it. It's totally true. Back when I had an office 5, 6 years ago, so we had employees that were making $50,000, $60,000 a year. And I realized they're spending 30% of their time on stuff that was not worth $50,000 a year. So we got them each an assistant, and we pretty much mandated like you should only be doing high level stuff at all times. If not, you either need to get someone or you need to talk to us. We'll help you get to someone. And you're absolutely right. It turned everyone into their own boss that had people underneath them. And it was fantastic. So I love that. What else? What did I miss?
Well, I think, why do it at all? The why, right? I mean, a lot of people are fascinated by this, and it's cool. Like, lifestyle design really is possible. It's not just a bunch of people on Instagram. In fact, my wife and I, if you don't know, we travel the world. Probably we have a base here in Colombia, and then probably once every month or 3 months, we're going to a different place all over the world, right? We've lived in Europe, right? We've done the dream, right? Which is living in Europe, living in Asia, living on the beach, living in the mountains, living in a ski resort. Like we've done it all, right? We've met other people who don't have Instagram accounts. In fact, the coolest people who are doing lifestyle design, you don't see them online. They're just enjoying it. They're not snapping selfies of them. And they're out here. They're in Medellin, and they're all over the United States, and they're all over Europe. There's people who are actually using delegation, tools, outsourcing to create an incredible, incredible life. And the irony of this is we're now a multi-million-dollar business, but I don't even need to make millions of dollars because I live in Colombia where my money goes like 4 times further. If I just made the same amount that I had made before, I would be getting a 4x raise because I've moved myself to a place where my money goes even further, right? So that's the irony. But the weird thing is when you give yourself more space and more financial space and more time space and more cognitive space, you end up having ideas that drive you even further forward, that make you even more profitable, right? So that's the irony lifestyle design isn't just about, a race to the bottom or a chase for the best selfie, right? It really is about freedom. It's about giving yourself that time freedom, that cognitive freedom, that financial freedom, not to stop working and kick back by a beach, because I promise you 99 out of 100 people listening to this, if you got your dream of sitting at the beach, a week later, you'd be like, okay, I'm bored. What do I do now?
Yep, 100%.
Right. And so it's really about freedom of choice. It's not about stopping work. It's about working on the work that's the most meaningful to you and that's the most meaningful to your client, and not being trapped inside of your work. So if there's anything that's a what's next, it's, guys, get clear on what you get out of it. Make the juice worth the squeeze. Like we always talk in such sterile terms about outsourcing and technology tools. Guys, at the end of the day, these are tools to help you get to a life that is juicy and honestly far beyond what you thought that you could have in terms of financial freedom and time freedom and success and gratification. I mean, let me give you a little detail from my life. Everybody looks at our pictures of like going through Europe, or, they think about like, we paid for a house in cash. We have a live-in chef, like these are the things that people get obsessed about. But you know what I'm obsessed about? Every day at 1:00, my wife and I take a nap together.
Fantastic.
That little detail, like being able to work the kind of work where we're never too busy to sit down and take a nap together. And what that's done for our relationship and what it's done for our peace of mind and our stress. We both have chronic stress-related illnesses that haven't recurred in years and years and years. Why? Because we only work 30 hours a week and we nap every day. We have good, healthy food. Like we've set up a life where we can still be contributing at our highest levels, but without all of that stress and my gut exploding, right? So that's what's next, is figure out how the juice is worth the squeeze and work back from that, rather than starting at tools and technology and outsourcing. And then, because then your brain won't be engaged. Your fundamental desire as a human being won't be engaged.
I love it. Demir, if people are listening and they're like, I want that, I want to learn from you, how can people find out about you?
Guys, if the people who are right to work for me are people, I can tell you exactly who it is. So I don't want to waste anybody's time, coming to try to work with me. We're here for people who are already extremely successful in their career, but they have a great career, but it's not working for them anymore. It's time to level it up by automating everything and moving away from it, or get out and start something new, right? So they're managing the biggest transition moment in their life. And the problem is they're usually the primary breadwinner of their house. They've got that pressure resting on their shoulder, right? And so what they do is they come and they work with us so that we can automate your existing job, create that new job, but in general, just create that freedom, the time freedom, the cognitive freedom, the financial freedom, so that you can actually succeed. Because for a lot of my people, failure is not an option. They've got dependents who are counting on them. So if that sounds like you, then you should absolutely either email me directly and just say, hey, I heard you on this podcast. I want to talk to you. My name's Demir, Demir at lifehackbootcamp.com. Or if you want to Facebook stalk me, that's sort of how I am. I want to Facebook stalk people first. You can go to lifehackbootcamp.com. That's lifehackbootcamp.com. We got a ton of free giveaway stuff and courses and stuff. Also, if you're a YouTube hound like me, check out our YouTube page. We actually put a lot of love and effort into sort of mind-blowing hacks and tricks and technologies and mindsets that we drop onto our YouTube page.
Demir, it's been a pleasure. This has been awesome. I look forward to continue working with you guys and supporting what you're doing. And I'm sure we'll have you back again.
Thanks, man.